All right, so you're thinking about, maybe dipping your toes into alternative investments, and fine wine sounds kind of interesting, huh?
Well, you're in the right place. We're going to unpack this investment memo from Allied Venture Partners.
It's on a company called Vint, and they're doing some really interesting things in the fine wine market.
Right, and what's got Allied VP so excited is that Vint is riding like a really interesting wave right now, you see.
Okay.
The whole alternative asset scene, everything from art to classic cars, it's booming. We're talking like a projected 60% growth by 2025,
Ooh.
hitting a mind-boggling $17 trillion.
Okay, $17 trillion. That's not just a wave, that's a tsunami. But why now? What's driving that kind of growth in alternative investments?
I think it's a confluence of factors, right? More investors, especially those who've kind of ridden the stock market roller coaster, are looking for other ways to grow their wealth. And fine wine has, a pretty solid track record, right? Plus, some regulations have loosened up, making it easier for a wider range of investors to get in on the action.
Right.
But the real disruptor here,
Okay.
technology. Platforms like Vint are using it to make alternative investments, including fine wine, accessible to a much broader audience, not just the ultra wealthy anymore.
So Vint is like democratizing access to fine wine investing. I'm intrigued, but also a little skeptical. I mean, we've all heard those too good to be true pitches. What makes Vint different? What did Allied VP see in them?
Two words: timing and execution. They were impressed by Vint's strategy, but even more so by their team's ability to get things done and fast.
Okay.
But before we get to their breakneck speed, let's understand what makes Vint's approach unique.
They've taken this traditionally exclusive world of fine wine and made it surprisingly accessible.
All right, walk me through it. How does Vint actually make like fine wine investing a thing for someone who's not a millionaire?
Well, imagine this. You've got these incredibly knowledgeable masters of wine.
Mm.
Think of them as the Jedi masters of the wine world.
Okay, I like it.
Vint brings them in to handpick collections of wines that are poised for growth.
Hold on, masters of wine, how many of those are? Like a handful.
Only 419 globally.
Oh, wow.
So you've got this incredibly rare expertise going into every single collection Vint curates. These aren't just random bottles off a shelf.
Right.
Then they structure each collection as its own LLC.
Okay.
And here's the kicker. They get it SEC qualified as a Regulation A plus offering.
So they've like cleverly structured this to be accessible even if you're not rolling in dough,
Right.
which is a big deal in the world of alternative investments. But what does that actually mean for the average investor?
It means that Vint can offer shares of these collections to both accredited and non-accredited investors.
Wow.
And they even made them IRA eligible.
Really?
This is practically unheard of in this space, and it opens up a whole new avenue for people to diversify their portfolios.
Okay, putting retirement funds into wine. I'm intrigued but skeptical. What's the catch?
Well, Vint takes care of the complexities. Okay. They store the wine in professional climate-controlled facilities until it reaches peak value, typically 3 to 7 years.
Right.
Then they handle the sale of the collection, distributing the profits back to the investors. You're essentially buying into their expertise, and their track record so far is pretty impressive.
It's like owning a share of a startup.
But instead of an app, it's a curated wine collection appreciating in value, with Vint as the experienced management team.
Exactly.
But what convinced Allied VP to actually bet on them? Was it just the wine?
They were definitely interested in the wine, but the team's ability to execute is what really sealed the deal for them. Allied BP was blown away by what Vint accomplished in a very short period. And they have this great anecdote that illustrates this perfectly.
Okay, lay it on me. What did this dream team do that got Allied VP so hyped?
Picture this, right? Vint's CEO is in the middle of a pitch with a major investor. Suddenly, fire alarm goes off.
Oh, no.
Everyone has to evacuate out onto a New York City sidewalk.
Oh.
Most people would call it a day, right?
Yeah, talk about a mood killer.
Not the CEO. He continues pitching for almost an hour right there on the sidewalk.
No way.
And guess what? He closed the deal.
That's commitment. That's makes you wonder what else they do to get a deal done, right?
Yeah.
But beyond the passionate team, what's the real story here? Does fine wine actually hold up as an investment? Did Allied VP actually uncork any data on that?
They did.
Okay.
And it's actually, it's pretty interesting. According to their research, fine wine has consistently outperformed the S&P 500 over the past 20 years.
Wait, seriously, Wine beat the stock market? I guess that's why they call it liquid gold. Tell me more.
We're talking a 270% return for fine wine,
Wow.
compared to 259% for the S&P 500. But it's not just about beating the market.
Okay.
Allied VP highlights that fine wine tends to have low correlation with traditional assets, meaning it can act as a buffer when other investments are tanking.
So when the stock market throws a tantrum, fine wine keeps its cool. I remember buying a nice bottle for my anniversary a few years back. Thought I was splurging. Now I'm wondering if I should have bought a case.
Right. It's a whole different way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Think 2008, the financial crisis.
Right.
The S&P 500 took a nosedive, almost 40%.
Yeah.
But the LivX 1000 Fine Wine Index, that's a key benchmark for this, barely dipped, less than 1%.
Wow, that is a huge E difference.
And during the 2020 pandemic dip,
Yeah.
same story. S&P 500 tumbled over 20%, the LivX just 4%. So, while past performance isn't a crystal ball, it does suggest that fine wine can hold its own even when things get rocky.
This is really making me rethink that anniversary bottle. But all right, let's be realistic. Every investment has risks. What are the potential downsides of fine wine investing that someone should be aware of?
That's an important point. LADP acknowledges this isn't a guaranteed win, right? It's
Okay.
not as liquid as the stock market, for example. You can't just cash out your wine collection overnight if you need to.
So it's more of a long game then.
Exactly. And like any collectible, there are inherent risks. Counterfeiting is a big one, especially in the high-end market. Even with experts like Vint's team, it's always a possibility.
Right.
Storage is another factor. Wine is delicate. Even minor variations in temperature and humidity can impact its value. Then there's always the risk of changing tastes, right?
Oh, interesting.
What's considered a prized vintage today might fall out of favor in a few years.
Seriously, you don't often think about the shelf life of trends. When we're talking about, well, literal shelf life. So with all that in mind, what's Allied VP's overall take on Vint? Are they bullish or bearish on their chances?
They're pretty optimistic, I'd say. They see Vint as kind of a front runner in a market that's really ripe for disruption.
Makes sense.
They've got a solid team, innovative technology, strong market fundamentals.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I think they're pretty convinced. And they even touch on this interesting aspect of fine wine investing.
Oh, okay. Like what?
Well, they acknowledge that for a lot of investors, it's not, just about the numbers. There's an experiential element to fine wine that's really unique.
Oh, right. Like you might actually get to drink this stuff someday.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not just an abstract asset.
Right.
It's something you can actually enjoy.
Mhm.
Share with friends, maybe open a bottle to celebrate a successful exit down the line. Who knows?
Right.
That adds a whole other layer to the investment, doesn't it?
It really does. It's like your portfolio is literally throwing a party. But seriously, it is fascinating to see how this all connects.
We started with a simple question about fine wine investing, and we ended up, down this rabbit hole of alternative assets and market trends and even the psychology behind what makes an investment appealing.
That's the beauty of a deep dive, isn't it? You never know where it might lead.
Absolutely. So for all of our listeners out there who are now considering, maybe adding a little vintage to their portfolio, do your homework, weigh the risks, and most importantly, keep a corkscrew handy for those future celebrations. Cheers.